Welcome to Journey On. I'm DJ Burr, the host and executive producer. I'm a licensed psychotherapist, behavioral addiction specialist, and best-selling author of I Just Wanted Love, Recovery of a Codependent Sex and Love Addict, available on Amazon, Audible, and iTunes. This podcast is for male survivors of sexual abuse and assault who want to experience a life worth living beyond a tragic past. I'm a survivor just like you, and I know the complexity of healing from trauma. I also know the joy that comes from the healing process. Hear our stories and share your own. You are not alone. You too can breathe deep and journey on. I encourage you to visit the Journey On website, www.journeynonpod.com. There you will find a link to sign up for my Recovery Journey newsletter, learn about my weekend recovery events for male survivors, and my online recovery coaching services for male survivors. If you have questions, concerns, or comments, or would like to be on the show, email me at journeynonpodcast@gmail.com. Journey On is on social media. Tweet us at JourneyOnPod. Find us on Instagram and Facebook at Journey On Podcast. Thank you for tuning in to this week's Journey On. This episode is an emotional one, so grab your tissue and call a friend after, because self-care is going to be really important after this one. This episode, we feature James's mom, Earlene. I told you last week that Earlene was going to be on the show because she asked to be. She asked to tell her side of the story in relation to James, who was on the show last week, who talked about his experience being molested as early as the age of 3 or 4, and how he went on to become a sexual predator. Earlene stresses in the interview that to her, James is not a predator because he never touched a child, but in the eyes of the law, he is identified as a sexual predator. And so I wanted to own that because I think he owns it. So in this episode, Earlene's going to talk about her experience of being a mother to someone who has been hurt by sexual abuse. She's going to talk about what it's like to find out that her son was addicted to sex and molested. And Earlene's going to stress the importance of reaching out to our communities to talk about sexual abuse and sexual trauma and sexual addiction. She's very passionate and compassionate, and I want you to listen carefully to what she has to say, because our stories are important and they need to be told. And I understand that sometimes it's very hard to get up the courage to speak. But what I want to say to you is that you are a strong person, and if you are hurting and you're in pain, I want you to go to the nearest person you trust and tell them about your hurt and your pain, because it will help you. It will help you become the courageous person that I know you are. That was my experience, and that has been the experience of all of our listeners and all of our speakers. So I encourage you to do what's best for you. And for me, that was telling my story. We want to thank Earlene for coming on to the show. And I want to tell you, sit back, listen, and if you need to take a break, do so. Your self-care is the most important today. Thank you for joining us for a special edition of Journey On, Men Healing from Sexual Abuse and Assault. And today I have a very special opportunity to speak with Earlene. Earlene is James's mom. If you can recall, James was in our last episode, and he talked about his experience of being molested as a child by several different perpetrators. And then unfortunately, James went on to become a perpetrator himself, and James is looking at some jail time, and it was a very moving episode, and I wanted to give his mom an opportunity. In fact, she asked for an opportunity to share her experience, and so I welcome Earlene to the show, and she's going to tell us a bit about herself and about her experience supporting her son through the trials and tribulations that he's going through. So, Earlene, welcome to the show.
Thank you, DJ.
Can you tell our audience where you're located right now?
Right now, I'm in the state of Tennessee in a motel room that's on a very restricted list because my son is on the sex offender registry list. So it's very confined in Tennessee. They have rules about how many feet from certain, parks and schools and things like that. So yes, I'm in Tennessee. I'm a Texan, and James was born a Texan. But this trial has taken us through different states.
Well, yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about your role in supporting James in terms of showing up for trials and things of that nature?
Yes, it has been a trial itself. I don't know how to tell you this story, except that James and I are Christians, and it's a big part of our character. So when this first happened, like 3 years ago, James was in Tennessee, and I was in Texas, and I got a phone call after the last day. Let me give you a little bit about who I am. I am a retired kindergarten teacher, so I've worked with young kids all my life, and I am a survivor, I can proudly say now, because this whole process has helped heal me. I'm a survivor of childhood molestation myself. So when this first happened, I was in Texas, and I received a phone call and that James had tried to commit suicide. So I flew up here, and of course I was devastated. I had no idea what was going on. And then it came out that this incident had happened. I noticed in your introduction that you used the word perpetrator. And to me, I want to tell you that James has never touched a child. He said something inappropriate, and he did show a picture. And he did have the child pornography on his computer, so that puts him on the list. But he's never touched a child. Anyway, I know my son. I know who I raised, and so I immediately, DJ, went into the he's innocent mode. I asked them to see the police report, and I recommend that to anybody who's involved in any kind of crime. Read the police report. And I began asking all kinds of questions. And I truly, truly believe my son was innocent, because at the time, and James will tell you this, he was not being truthful. So he got incarcerated, much to my dismay. And then I will quite frankly say, he continued his Christian ministry in the institute here for, I guess, almost a year and a half. He led 2 Bible studies. So I am out there. Now, part of my story is my frustration with the justice system, DJ. I began to write and call all over this nation for the innocent, because, like I said, I truly believe he was innocent. And my heart goes out to the people who have incarcerated loved ones who are really, really innocent, because nobody returned my phone calls. Nobody listened to me. So then James served his term, and in the meantime, I'm watching videos of how the legislatures, and I write into the legislatures. One of the first things I did when I came out from Texas was I went straight to the senator of our district, and he said, "Oh, we see people all the time with problems with the law." And I'm going like, I think in my head, well, then something's the matter here, right? So I began to write to ACLU. They didn't help. Anyway, James finishes his term here, and because he's married to a California girl, they decide to go back to California. So that involves the interstate compact. And James goes out to California, immediately gets a job because he's so smart. Now, I do have to tell you, DJ, my son was a very, very high government official here in Tennessee. And I really believe in my heart that's why the law enforcement came after him. And in my heart, I believe they violated his due process. But I am not a lawyer. Now, anytime you want to interject, because I do talk a lot, because I have a lot to say, DJ, so anytime you have a question, just stop me.
I will.
Okay. Would you like to ask a question now?
Not yet.
Okay. So we went out to California, and he got a job immediately. Now, part of my closing statement, I will address his lack of being able to get a job here. Okay, so let's see. I went back to Texas, and I was greatly relieved that he was with family that loved him and all this. And I get another call. James has tried to commit suicide again because they did a sweep, and they found more pornography on his phone. Okay, so I hop on the airplane, go out to California, and I began a whole year and a half, because it dawned on me right there and then, oh my gosh, my whole life, and I personalized this, my whole life has been destroyed because of my childhood molestation. And this is what James has been hiding. He's been living in darkness all his life. So I began a different fight, DJ. I began a fight for rehabilitation, and I began to research like nothing I've done before on brain research. And I went, oh my gosh. I began to write to people like, 90% of Americans do not realize this is a mental illness, and it's not being addressed as a mental illness. That when you watch pornography, you are rewiring your brain. And so I wrote to, I'm going to go ahead and say this if you need to edit some of these people. Where James tried to commit suicide the second time, and I have an awesome story if he didn't tell that in his first interview. I called this billboard, and it said, fightthenewdrug.com.
Yeah.
So I began talking to them. And, oh, my gosh, the research that shows this is a mental illness. So I began to write to all the government officials in California. I began to plead for him not to be further incarcerated. Okay, so I get to California. I fly in, and I stay at the hospital with James. I sleep on the floor because he is on a suicide watch. He has another person in the room. He's trying to commit suicide. So then they send him to this wonderful rehabilitation place. I camp out, and I became virtually a homeless person for a couple of weeks because I could not drive those windy roads in Napa. Anyway, I stayed so I could see his visiting hours. And he came back to life. He wanted to live. He wanted to fight. And I'm going, oh, this is wonderful. So then after that, they put him back into the system, the punishment of the justice system. I began to go through his paperwork, and I found a paper that said any time, and I found out later I was wrong, but it says any time a family member can volunteer information about the patient that would affect the sentencing. So I wrote to the judge down there, and I said, ma'am, these are the 4 things. Now, I will tell you right now, I wrote these 4 or 5 things to the Interstate Compact because he had crossed, and probably the judicial system, the U.S. judicial system, because he had crossed state lines.
Now, did he know?
Okay,
I do have a question. Did he know that he was going to be violating the terms of his release?
He absolutely did. He signed it. James will tell you he is guilty. He is guilty, and I tried to do other things, and no, he's not guilty. This is how strong the addiction is, DJ.
Oh,
when
I know.
a person can. Oh, great! I'm glad because you see people who are so addicted. So I write to these people and I say, look, here now. DJ, I'm saying again a disclaimer. I'm a kindergarten teacher, but when you walk through an experience, hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
When you walk, I thought I heard you disconnect. When you walk through an experience and you don't share with somebody else, I think that's absolutely wrong. So I said, number 1, my son comes from a family of documented medical illness. My dad was paranoid schizophrenic, and he was institutionalized in Texas. Number 2, James tried to commit suicide. Some people say, well, they try to commit suicide because they feel guilty. No, that is not an option with a normal person. Number 3, my son was on heavy antidepressant medicine. Number 4, oh gosh, I have these written down. Number 4, he had this was really important. I said he had a documented history of molestation. Now, this happened because I read the police reports. I didn't even know how he had been molested. He had told me one time, and I just kind of ignored it a little bit because I thought, well, James is so well-rounded. He's gotten over it. He's not like me and changed your whole life. Well, no, he didn't. He was hiding it so well. A part of this, and I'm going to throw this in right now before I forget it, because a big part of this crime is the shame and guilt that the child feels. They feel like it's their fault that they did something, and I did too. And so I had these 4 things, and I wrote to the judge and said, please rehabilitate it, please. Well, they didn't. So they put it in a system for a year. They said that there was mitigating circumstances, DJ, and I said, well, he crossed state lines. He really should have gotten 8 years. How come you gave him 2 and he only serves 1? Well, they said there was mitigating circumstances. I sat in the hall. I went to all his sentencings. I waved to him. I secretly gave him my love you signs and things like that to encourage him. And I wrote, oh my gosh, I'm not a writer, but I wrote every day to him and tried to get on the phone system and call him to encourage him. Don't you get depressed. You're worth it. You're worth it. So anyway, I sat in the hall right next to his defense attorney, which was free because we had no money. So she said there were mitigating circumstances because his sentence got reduced to 2 years and he actually only served 1. So they carted him off to San Quentin, DJ. Okay, my son writes to me that he is sleeping in a cell that's 5 feet by 10 feet, and he's sleeping on the upper bunk that he has to wrap himself around a shelf. You talk about a mom getting mad. The Bible talks about a mother bear taking care of her cubs, and that's me. I started writing to everybody, the newspapers, the justice system. I said, this is inhumane. You cannot treat people like this. And I told her, I said, look, I am not asking for a golf course. I'm not asking for catered meals. I'm asking for a cell that is bigger than zoo animals are in. I'm asking for a cell where he can go to the bathroom and not hit his knees on his roommates, on his cellmate's head. I'm going like, James couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep for the 4 months he was in there. Okay, now that's just the tip of the iceberg. James is diabetic. He said, Mom, I'm on my bunk 23 and a half hours a day. I don't get any exercise. I do not even get but 15 minutes in the shower. I hit the ceiling, CJ. I said, you are not treating my son health-wise. He gained 40 pounds in the 4 months he was there, and that is a big part of his problems now. He can't even sleep at night because his feet are so diabetically, with that neuropathy thing, whatever it's called. I am so mad about the way the justice system is treating sex offenders, DJ. Now, I'm not saying that all of them need but I'm going to just tell you about James's experience. So do you have any questions yet, DJ?
Yeah, I want to go into a little bit. So when you talk about the fact that you reached out to fight the new drug, I know that they work with individuals, or at least provide information about porn addiction. And I am a specialist, and I address sex addiction, which includes porn addiction. And I am well aware that it is an addiction. It is not the person's fault that they have that addiction, but it is their responsibility to address it. So I wanted to ask you, did you know that so I believe you said that you did not know he had a porn addiction. Is that accurate?
Yes, I did not know it.
You did not know that. So when you found out, was that after he was arrested?
Yes, and I read the police report.
And you read the police report?
Yes, I demanded to read the police report and find out what was going on because he and his ex-wife went into turtle shell or ostrich in the sand. They just wanted to make it go away, like it didn't happen.
Right.
And I'm not that way. I want to find out what's going on.
So he didn't receive any treatment for sex addiction?
No, he didn't receive anything except 15 minutes at San Quentin with a psychologist.
Right.
And that was the whole. And I kept calling people and saying, how come he's in this county and the mental health people are not helping him here? How come he's getting no counseling? And this is a big part of my story today is the injustice toward these people. And James will tell you, he did not get anything.
I absolutely agree with you. I mean, there are some injustices, and so maybe I can give you a little bit more information in terms of sex addiction. Now, our podcast isn't about sex addiction. It's about men healing from sexual abuse and assault, but as a result of that abuse, a lot of men, especially some of the men that I've talked to, do suffer from addiction, and some of them most likely are suffering from sex addiction. Now, unfortunately,
right.
Sex addiction isn't really supported in the medical community as a legitimate disease. And that's something as I have to, as a provider and as a person who identifies as a sex addict, have to fight against every day. So the resources aren't necessarily available. I mean, we have therapists out there who can support folks who are dealing with sex addiction, but like the DSM, and that's the diagnostic statistical manual that we use to diagnose people, doesn't even include sex addiction in that. So,
wow.
so insurance, for example, won't even pay for sex addiction treatment. So
Right.
there's so many layers to this problem, and there's
Right.
so many layers to what's happened to James, and I'm so sorry that he was abused as a child, like all of us who are listening to this podcast right now.
Wow.
But I also understand that we have to take responsibility. And I know that you're a parent and you want the best for your son. But at some point, he has to do his part to get the work, right? So
Right.
I understand that he's not getting that in jail, but when he gets out, and he's gotten out before, he has to take those next steps to get the help that he needs and share his story. Otherwise,
Right.
it eats him up inside, and then something as unfortunate as him, being charged with, uh, child molestation has occurred, and that may be in part because the resources aren't available. Maybe he didn't ask for the support. Maybe he didn't know the support was there. So there's so many layers there, right?
There is, and I'm so glad to hear you're affirming what I'm about to say too. Now, some of your listeners may think this is a really ridiculous, connection, but I can. Okay, well, I'll say I turned from my molestation. I turned to food. I cannot bring a package of salty, crunchy chips into my house. I walk past in the grocery store because if I bring it into my house, it's a different layer of my choice point. What I'm going to say is my choice. James had a choice, but there was so much guilt and shame and covering all his life. He was 34. He'd had this back since he was 5, DJ.
Yeah.
This was ingrained in his brain, a deep rewiring. And like I told this lady, he has to have his whole nervous system rewired.
Oh, sure.
And, this is just as strong and powerful, and people don't think it. Americans joke about pornography, but it is strong and it's powerful. It's got a big industry behind it, too.
Sure, it's a worldwide issue.
If I bring in those chips, it's a different level. You
Sure.
talk about layering. Okay, and then if somebody opens the bag, oh my gosh, and they put it on the table in front of me, I will eat the whole bag. So I'm sorry it's such a silly analogy, but comparison to how powerful sex is one of the most basic human needs. Now, people say, oh, well, he could have resisted. Yeah? Okay, let me give you another silly example. And then it's not really silly. When it comes to education, we say, please, parents, feed your kids breakfast before they come to school because they will not think about anything else. The other day, I left the house in a hurry, and I had a lot of errands to run. By noon, I was thinking of nothing else but food. I was hungry, and my driving even affected my driving. And I thought to myself, oh, my gosh, a basic thing like sex. I've read some sex books now by people like Patrick Carnes, and they say that these people sacrifice every moment of their life is consumed with trying to satisfy this drive, this addiction. Now, I will say this. I know that I've never had drugs or alcohol addiction, but I know there's a choice point that's there. And I also know from talking to experts now that a lot of drug addicts and a lot of alcoholics were molested as children, DJ.
Oh, yes.
I've talked to national organizations and found out that a vast majority of sex offenders were molested as children. James says everybody in his groups have always been molested as children. Now, something you're talking about the justice system and society waking up and saying, hey, this is a mental illness. Okay, so I called the American Society of Psychologists. I called the American Society of Special Counselors. Got no help from anybody. They said, well, he has to be accountable. DJ, I I have been fighting and fighting and fighting, and I'm calling and calling and calling. Well, we found, okay, so he violates. He comes back to Tennessee after, oh, my gosh. Did James tell you about his transport?
He did.
Oh, my gosh. He did?
Yeah.
Talk about the injustice. Oh, my goodness. This is something that if American people knew about the way these people are transported, this is something from a third world country.
Yeah, well, they're gonna know. Gosh. They're gonna know by listening to his story. He was very eloquent in explaining what happened to him, and I know that this is very upsetting for you and your family, and I hate that this is what's happening.
I know, but it's beyond our control right now. And real quickly, I don't know how much time I have left. Let me, since this, everybody can say, "Oh, what a sad story," and I feel bad for them. But let me tell you something. I have really been meditating and praying about this, and I'm not going to leave without making some recommendations. I know that I just watched. And this may seem like it doesn't connect. I just watched the celebration of 100 years of Vimy Ridge, and I know that your listeners may be some in Canada. Vimy Ridge happened 100 years ago, and Canadians are very proud, and I agree with them, of the sacrifice that was made. And I think one of the quotes from one of the commentators up there was that these veterans gave their tomorrows that we could have our todays. Well, that is exactly the opposite of child molestation. You are stealing a child's whole life from them, their confidence, their self-worth before God. And I am asking people to please stand up and do something about this. Our expert that we found, and I'm going to give him, I need the people listening to know that Scott Walker here in Tennessee, he has a radio station. He actually is listening to us and giving us a platform here in Tennessee. And your show, and the expert that came down, and I paid $1,800. It was all arranged that James was going to get a year of rehabilitation. And he came down and he testified, and he was shocked. He was shocked. He said, he's like, you mean, and this is the same in California, they get 1 hour per week with 15 other people in the group. And he's like, oh my gosh, this is a deep, deep wound, DJ, a deep wound that's being band-aided by our society. Yeah. Oh, well, the DA up here got all mad. Oh, how dare you attack our system? James will tell you, oh, well, they're just checking off the box. I'll ask him, how's your class going? He goes, as usual, no therapy. This needs deep addressing. Now, it's called Alpha Humane Services. We found it. We looked all across the nation for this, and it is awesome. I'm going to give them a big shout-out because they lock them down. They give them heavy therapy. They do not leave the campus without a escort, and they are healed. Now, the man did say 85% of our clients have addictions besides sexual offenders. Now, James wanted healing. I paid for healing. I'm just going to have to be honest with you and tell you, we had a terrible lawyer. He said he was going to do a good job, but the minute he opened his mouth, he threw in the towel. And I was like, why didn't he say you're here for restoration, James? He didn't. The judge was hungry. The whole situation was so bad. And now James has to go and serve possibly 6 years when he had the possibility of me paying out of my teacher retirement. Okay, now listen to this, DJ. The average criminal costs the Tennessee taxpayer about $28,000 a year, which breaks down to $72 a day. I was going to pay double that, $152 a day, for my son to be rehabilitated because he's worth it to me. He's a good man, and he nobody's going to go after the people that molested him 30 years ago. Nobody's going to go after my grandfather who molested me 60 years ago. So I'm trying to go forward. This American society needs to go forward, and I'm going to say real quickly: if you're a parent, if you are a grandparent, and your child shows you balking, fighting you, not going to go see somebody, that's a red flag to me. That's what I did, and nobody paid attention to me, my grandfather. If your child gets a sudden weight gain, James ballooned from age 3 to age 5. You can look at his pictures. He doubled in size, and I didn't know to investigate. Why are you eating so much? It was because that's when the molestation started, DJ. If your child is showing you any hesitation about any adult, pay attention to that, because children have a natural instinct. Another thing, if you're a businessman, please give these people a chance. My son tried. He's an expert. He scored 100 on the test. Couldn't even get a job from a telephone in the house. How does a man feel when he can't get a job and support his family? They have no chance judicially. They have no chance society-wise. They're scorned. James wants to help others. He wanted rehabilitation, but he's going back to prison for possibly 6 years. So it breaks my heart. He's my only son. I should be enjoying the rest of my life with my son, but now I'm in this battle. And I encourage people, if they're listening, to call their congressman to change these laws. In Canada, you have an awesome prime minister. Awesome. I really like him a lot. This world has to be made safe, and be silent no more, because if you're silent, the evil's going to triumph. The evil's going to triumph. So
I really appreciate your passion. I wish that everyone had a passionate parent like you.
They do, but they just don't know. My people perish for the lack of knowledge. They just don't know. And I really dump it on. Can I say something else?
Sure.
I really dump it on the medical profession. Okay, my dad was diagnosed 60 years ago at least as being mentally ill. Now people go, oh, mentally ill, and they're sympathetic. But one of the counselors that I corresponded with, she said, well, it's going to take 50 more years, Earlene, before anybody even listens that this is a sexual addiction is a mental illness. 50 more years of children being molested every night. I cry for those children. I said, God, please help these children. Somebody, if they can call their congressman, if they can call the medical people and say, why haven't you declared this a medical illness? This is a big wake-up call for society, and I know lots of people have been shamed and silenced about it. I'm not. I am so proud of my son for battling this darkness, and he wrote plenty of poems. He wrote plenty of prose, and I'm starting to give it to the pro-life people. I'm starting to give it to the Celebrate Recovery people. His work is going to get out there. I'm not going to be quiet about it. It's got to stop. And people have to realize that if they're listening to this message, they have children. If they're in education, if they're a teacher, oh my gosh, go to the counselors. Go to your PTA organization. Go to the new director of Department of Education. Say, we want a strong program like Say No to Drugs. We want our kids protected, and we want to know who's touching them, because it is not a stranger. It is somebody that they know. It is somebody they know, DJ.
I'm glad you said that, because that is absolutely the truth. Most people who are, victims of a predator, they know them. And the people that have been on our podcast so far, they all knew who their perpetrator was, including myself. So I strongly encourage you to continue advocating for James and continue advocating for change. We need more people like you and more people like our listeners to help create change. There are so many layers here, and we're not going to figure it all out over a podcast, but we can start having the conversation, and that's why I started this podcast, to start a conversation. And so, Earlene, I really want to thank you for taking time out of your day to have this conversation with me, and it's greatly appreciated.
I greatly appreciate you and anybody else in the media who will speak out, because like I told you, I have written and called, and people ignore. And how do you think that makes us feel and children feel when we need help, we ask for help? And the Bible says you have not because you ask not. And I want to encourage your listeners, if they listen to this, they can do something. Even if it's a retired police officer, a retired teacher, volunteer in the schools, do something to help these children, because it's a vicious cycle. Can you imagine, DJ, an America where most of the drug problems and most of the sexual prostitution and all this other stuff were stopped because these children were stopped molested? We're going to break the cycle. It has to be broken.
We got to break the cycle.
Just going to be. We really do. I so much appreciate you. And if anybody calls, please feel free to give my phone number, Jaden's phone number. Now, he's going back into into jail. There's nothing we can do about it, legally, because the judge has made this decision, much to our horror and dismay. So, and he's not going to even get, he's going to get out, and I'm still going to have a child in this adult body who's not healed, DJ, and it breaks my heart.
But he will have an opportunity to heal after he's released. So please stay hopeful about that. And James has my number, and he can contact me when he's released, and we'll find the resources for him. So him going back into jail is not a death sentence. He will get the help that he needs. So stay strong, stay hopeful, okay?
Thank you again so much.
All right. You take care. Bye-bye.
I will. Bye-bye.
Thank you for taking the time today to listen to James's story through the eyes of his mother, Earlene. It's so important to have support in our lives when we're going through something very traumatic and dramatic and challenging, such as James. And James's story is not the only one out there that's like this. I believe there are probably a lot of people out there who have been hurt and who have gone on to hurt others. And I stress to those people, get the help that you need. It is so important for you to get the help that you need. You cannot do this alone. The abuse that happened to you was not your fault, but you are responsible for taking care of yourself so you do not harm other people. Reach out to your community support. Reach out to your familial support if that exists. Just reach out. You can send me an email. You can reach me on Instagram or Facebook. You can do whatever you need to do to reach out for help. I'll be there, and our listeners will be there. And if you want to share your story, we're here. There's a new tool available to all you Journey On followers. It's Journey On Survivors, a private Facebook group for survivors to network, build support, and to discuss all things Journey On. You can find the link on our homepage, journeynonpod.com, or link directly to it by going to bit.ly/journeyonsurvivors. I'll be on the group to answer any questions or to provide support. Check us out. That's bit.ly/journeyonsurvivors, or search Journey On Survivors on Facebook. Tune in next week for the finale of Journey On. It has been a pleasure of mine to be able to provide you these stories from men healing from sexual abuse and assault. I am so pleased that we have been able to reach so many people in such a short amount of time. Please like, share, follow, everything that you can to support the cause. Share our stories and share your own. You are not alone. Next week, you can stay tuned to hear from a supporter of ours. He is a cop who is in the UK, who is doing everything in his power to bring us support. And I know that his work is only isolated to the UK, but his message is going around the world. Journey On is looking to hear from you. If you are interested in sharing your experience, strength, and hope with our audience, email us at journeynonpodcast@gmail.com for details. Journey On's production is currently funded in whole by me as part of my desire to provide support to those who are still suffering. Production costs fluctuate and can be prohibitive in terms of what I can offer to our audience. You can help support Journey On's mission by supporting the production. There are two options. You can donate the amount of your choice directly from your cell phone by texting the word JOURNEY to 855-735-2437. That's JOURNEY to 855-735-2437. Or you can become a patron of the show by setting up a monthly contribution by going to patreon.com/journeyon. That's patreon.com/JOURNEYON. Once there, you can select the contribution level of your choice. Thank you for considering. Don't forget to visit journeynonpod.com and sign up for my Recovery Journey newsletter. Once you are subscribed, you will get more information about my weekend male survivor retreats and my online coaching services for male survivors. Journey On is produced by DJ Burr and the Recovery Legacy Network, bringing you recovery on all fronts. Learn more at recoverylegacynetwork.com. Today's music features tracks by CDK and Airtone. You can learn more about the tracks on our website, journeynonpod.com. Until next time, breathe deep and journey on.